At this time, I'm going to walk you through the PowerPoint presentation on writing a K-TIP lesson plan. The first section of the lesson plan is basically demographic information that for this class you will actually have to make up the information that goes here based on the lesson plan that you decide to write. Each section of this first portion that deals with the demographics must be completed even on the lesson plans that you are writing for this class, and we will talk about them individually. This next slide shows the lesson plan filled in. So in other words, use the template that I've provided and then go in and fill in the information just as you see it, making sure you have printed out the sample lesson plan that I have provided you so that you can look at it as you watch and listen to this demonstration. The name section is actually your name. The date of observation means the date of the lesson. Again, the next section asks for age and grade. Notice we have grade level here. You would also want to put the average age that deals with third grade, or that you would find in third grade. Number of students. And here's the section that I need you to listen to closely. Every lesson plan that you write for this class requires that you have one or more IEPs. The other categories, I don't care for the purposes of this class, but you must have IEPs, individualized education programs or plans. Those are your students with special needs. Next section, content area. That means what subject, what is the content of the lesson, the projected length of time that you will spend on this lesson if you were teaching it in the real world. If it is a unit, give it a title. If it's not a unit, then this is not applicable. This is a must. Notice it says lesson number within the unit sequence. So, if you are teaching a lesson, for example, on math, and this is the first lesson of 2, this is the way you would record it. It might be the 3rd out of 4, or the 2nd out of 5. That's what that fraction represents. What lesson number is this in the series? And that's important because anyone who would be observing you teach this particular lesson would need to know if students have any prior instruction and how far along you are in the sequence of teaching this content. Give your lesson a title. If you use any information off of the internet or other sources, printed sources, including clip art, worksheets, whatever, ideas, you must give credit where credit is due. So make sure that you do not plagiarize and you fill in this section. This is section A. I will stop at this point and begin a new recording for section B. Now let's talk about section or part B. Here is an example of a filled-in Part B, referencing critical student characteristics. So anything specific that would be pertinent for a reader or observer of your lesson plan, anything pertinent that they would need to know that would give them insight into characteristics of your students that would impact their learning abilities or performance level in your classroom. Notice the second bullet says describe how you will embed the goals of students with the IEP and so forth. Remember I said you must have at least one or more IEPs in all lesson plans. Even as a regular ed classroom teacher, you know that through mainstreaming you will have students with special needs in your classroom. You will have IEPs that you have to follow as a regular ed classroom instructor. So the filled in red says, to embed the goals of each student's IEP, I will read material aloud to students. So in this section, basically, they're asking you, as I've indicated in red, tell us what you're going to do to address the goals of your students, in this case IEPs, in some instances the GSSP or the PSP or even 504s, but I'm only having you address IEPs for this class. Look at the sample lesson plan that I had you print out as well and what is written there. State why this lesson is developmentally appropriate for this group of learners. Now this says developmentally appropriate. This is not where you sit and just make up stuff. You have to know the developmental state or characteristics or expectations of the age level in which you are instructing. So with this particular third grade level, you'll notice in red, I have shared with you, or the reader of this lesson plan, why this lesson is developmentally appropriate based on the age level and developmental level of the children in my classroom. Now you're also talking about the cognitive as well as affective and psychomotor domains. You'll find in educational psychology, if you haven't had that course yet, or you may be viewing this as a current student of that course, you know that at different age levels, students are capable of processing different aspects of learning to a different degree. For example, students who are in the first grade do not understand reversibility, although students in fifth grade would. And reversibility I'm referring to, for example, in a math lesson. Sequencing would be another example. Students are not able to sequence necessarily. You would not expect them to do that in kindergarten. However, you would certainly expect that of a third, fourth, or fifth grader and above. I'm going to go on into Part C since Part B was relatively short. Part C, lesson alignment. Read my screen and read the handout or the sample lesson that you've been provided. Describe the student's prior knowledge. In other words, this goes back to what lesson plan are you in the series of lessons. So we need to know, what do your students already know? If this is the first lesson in the lesson series of lessons, you would say here, students have no prior content knowledge. Second bullet, explain how this lesson relates to the unit of study. Read what I've put in red here. Third bullet, explain what content and or skill is needed from this lesson for the next lesson. So in other words, what are you going to need students to, quote unquote, get out of this lesson that will help them be ready for the next lesson and to be successful in that next lesson?